The stagecoach rattled into McGill, Nevada on a scorching August afternoon in 1878, carrying a woman whose veil couldn't quite hide the jagged scar that ran from her left temple down to her jaw. A pale reminder of violence survived. Katherine Vance stepped down from the coach with steady hands despite the stares that followed her wherever she went. Her carpetbag clutched firmly as dust swirled around the hem of her dark traveling dress. She had come west to escape the whispers of Philadelphia society, to start fresh where no one knew her story, but she had forgotten that scars told their own tales regardless of geography. McGill was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of wooden buildings scattered across the Nevada desert like dice thrown carelessly across felt. The copper mines brought men seeking fortune, and with them came the usual assortment of saloons, a general store, a boarding house, and a small church that looked optimistic in its pristine white paint. Katherine lifted her veil slightly to get a better look at her new home, immediately regretting it as a group of miners stopped their conversation to stare. "Miss Vance." A woman's voice cut through the uncomfortable silence. Katherine turned to find a plump woman in her 50s approaching with a warm smile that didn't falter even when she got a clear view of Katherine's face. "I'm Mrs. Henderson. I run the boarding house. We've been expecting you." "Thank you for meeting me," Katherine said, relieved to find at least one person who didn't seem disturbed by her appearance. "Think nothing of it, dear. Let me help you with your things." Mrs. Henderson reached for the carpetbag, but Katherine held firm. "I can manage." "Stubborn, I see." "We'll get along just fine." Mrs. Henderson's eyes twinkled as she gestured down the dusty Main Street. "The boarding house is just this way. You must be exhausted from your journey." As they walked, Katherine became aware of a man watching her from outside the general store. He was tall, lean in the way of men who worked hard for their living, with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of weathered oak. He wore dusty denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, and a hat pushed back far enough that she could see his face clearly. What struck her most wasn't his rugged features or the gun belt slung low on his hips, but the way he looked at her with simple curiosity rather than pity or disgust. Their eyes met for a moment, and Katherine quickly lowered her gaze, hurrying after Mrs. Henderson. "That's Nathan Foster, Mrs. Henderson said casually, having noticed the exchange. "He runs cattle in the valleys east of here. Good man. Lost his wife and daughter to fever 3 years back. Hasn't been the same since, but then again, how could he be?" Katherine's throat tightened. She understood loss, understood how tragedy carved pieces out of you that never quite filled in again. The boarding house was modest but clean, with lace curtains that seemed almost comically delicate against the harsh desert landscape visible through every window. Mrs. Henderson showed Katherine to a small room on the second floor, sparsely furnished with a bed, a washstand, and a wardrobe that leaned slightly to the left. "I know it's not much," Mrs. Henderson began, but Katherine shook her head. "It's perfect, truly. Dinner's at 6. We keep country hours here. You'll meet the other boarders then." Mrs. Henderson paused at the door. "Katherine, dear, people here have all run from something or are running towards something. Nobody's going to judge you for whatever brought you west." After Mrs. Henderson left, Katherine sat on the edge of the narrow bed and allowed herself a moment of uncertainty. She had told herself this would be a fresh start, that she could build a life here teaching school, which was the position she had secured through correspondence. But the stairs today had reminded her that scars traveled with you no matter how many miles you put between yourself and the place where you earned them. She touched the raised tissue along her face, remembering the moment 2 years ago when her father's business partner had revealed his true nature. Jonathan Hayes had seemed so charming, so appropriate as a suitor. Her father had encouraged the match. She had been 19 and foolish enough to believe that love meant grand gestures and pretty words. She had learned too late that Jonathan's temper ran deep and dark as a mine shaft, that his desire for control extended beyond business matters. The night she had refused his proposal, he had shown her the knife he always carried. The scar was her reward for saying no. Katherine pushed the memory away and unpacked her few belongings, hanging the 2 simple dresses she owned in the crooked wardrobe. She had left everything behind when she fled Philadelphia, taking only what she could carry, and the money she had saved from her work as a governess. The school board in McGill had been desperate enough for a teacher that they had hired her based solely on her references without requiring a photograph or in-person interview. She hoped they wouldn't regret that decision when they saw her face. Dinner that evening was a boisterous affair. The boarding house hosted 6 permanent residents plus Katherine. There were 2 minors, brothers named Jack and Samuel, who argued constantly, but with obvious affection. A widow named Mrs. Porter, who ran a laundry service and had opinions about everything. A young clerk named Timothy, who worked at the mining company office and blushed whenever anyone spoke to him directly. And surprisingly, Nathan Foster, who Mrs. Henderson explained kept a room in town when he didn't want to ride back to his ranch in the dark. Nathan nodded politely when they were introduced, but didn't speak much during the meal. Katherine noticed he had good table manners, unlike the miners who shoveled food into their mouths as if afraid someone might steal it. He ate methodically, his attention seemingly focused on his plate, but she caught him glancing her way several times. "Miss Vance is our new school teacher," Mrs. Henderson announced to the table. "She'll be starting when school opens in September. Where you from?" Jack asked around a mouthful of potatoes. "Philadelphia. Long way from home," Samuel observed. "What brings a city girl to Nevada?" Katherine had prepared for this question. "I wanted to see the West. I thought teaching would be a good way to do it." It wasn't entirely a lie. She had wanted to escape, which was nearly the same thing. "You'll have your hands full," Mrs. Porter said. "The children here are wild as mustangs, no discipline in them at all." "I'm sure Miss Vance can handle them," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "She comes very well recommended." After dinner, Katherine excused herself to the front porch, needing air and solitude. The evening had cooled marginally, though the heat still radiated from the wooden boards beneath her feet. The sky was turning the color of bruised plums, and stars were beginning to emerge in such abundance that it took her breath away. Philadelphia had never had stars like this. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she startled at Nathan's voice. He had come onto the porch so quietly she hadn't heard him, and now he stood a respectful distance away, leaning against the railing with his hat in his hands. "I've never seen so many stars," Katherine admitted. "One thing the desert's good for: clear skies most nights." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "Mrs. Henderson says you're from Philadelphia." "Yes. That's a big change." "I needed a change." Katherine kept her scarred side turned slightly away from him, an old habit. Nathan didn't press for details. Instead, he said, "The school's a good building. Stone, so it stays cooler than most places. You'll have about 15 students, I'd guess. Ages 6 to 14, maybe. You know a lot about the school. My daughter would have been 6 this year. I think about it sometimes, what she would have been learning." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Katherine heard the grief underneath. "Mrs. Henderson told me about your loss. I'm very sorry. 3 years now. Sarah was just learning to walk. Fever took them both in less than a week." He turned his hat in his hands, examining it as if he had never seen it before. "You learn to live with it, but you never get over it." Katherine understood. "No, you don't. Nathan looked at her then, really looked at her, his gaze taking in the scar without flinching. "Whatever gave you that must have hurt like hell." The blunt observation surprised a laugh out of her. "It did, but you're here." "Yes." "Then you're stronger than whatever tried to take you down." He settled his hat back on his head. "I've got an early start tomorrow. Good night, Miss Vance." "Good night, Mr. Foster." She watched him walk away, his boots making soft thuds on the wooden sidewalk. She touched her scar again, but this time the gesture felt different somehow. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. Katherine spent her days at the schoolhouse, cleaning and organizing, preparing lessons for students she hadn't yet met. The school board chairman, a nervous man named Mr. Whitmore, had visited once, his eyes sliding away from her face as he spoke. But he seemed satisfied with her credentials and left her to her work. McGill slowly revealed itself to her. The town existed because of the copper mines, and everything revolved around the mining company's schedule. Shifts changed with the ringing of a bell that could be heard throughout the valley. The general store stocked more lamp oil and work gloves than any other merchandise. The saloons were busiest on Saturday nights when the miners got paid, but there were gentler aspects too. A small community of families lived in houses behind the main street, women who had followed their husbands west and were determined to build civilization in the desert. They had established a library in a corner of the general store, organized church services, and created a system of mutual aid that meant no one went hungry even when times were hard. Katherine saw Nathan occasionally, usually from a distance. He would ride into town for supplies, his horse a sturdy bay mare that seemed to anticipate his every movement. Sometimes he stopped at the boarding house, and they would exchange pleasantries, but nothing more. Katherine told herself she wasn't disappointed by his reserve. 3 days before school was set to begin, Katherine was at the schoolhouse arranging readers by level when she heard horses approaching fast. She looked out the window to see 3 riders pulling up in a cloud of dust. They dismounted with the casual arrogance of men used to getting their way, and Katherine felt her stomach tighten. The leader was a thick-set man with a red face and greasy hair that hung to his shoulders. He wore gun belts crossed over his chest like some kind of outlaw from a dime novel. His companions were younger, meaner-looking, with the empty eyes of men who enjoyed violence. They pushed into the schoolhouse without knocking. "Well, well," the leader said, his gaze raking over Katherine. "You must be the new teacher. Heard there was a spinster from back east taking the job." Katherine straightened her spine. "I'm Miss Vance. May I help you?" Name's Cyrus Dalton. "I run things around here, whether folks want to admit it or not. Thought I should meet the woman who's going to be teaching our children. The school board hired me. If you have concerns, I suggest you take them up with Mr. Whitmore." Cyrus laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "I like a woman with spine, but you should know how things work here, Miss Vance. I look out for my own and I expect loyalty in return. I'm loyal to my students and their education." Pretty words. He moved closer and Katherine resisted the urge to step back. "But let's be clear. My nephew Tommy is going to be in your class. I expect him to do well. Very well. Understand? I expect all my students to do well based on their effort and ability." Cyrus's expression hardened. "You're new here, so I'll give you some advice. Don't make enemies of people who can hurt you." His eyes fixed on her scar. "Looks like you've already had some trouble in your life. Be a shame if more found you." Before Katherine could respond, a voice came from the doorway. "I think the lady's made her position clear, Dalton." Nathan Foster stood framed in the entrance, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. He looked relaxed, but Katherine sensed the coiled tension in him. "This isn't your business, Foster," Cyrus said. I'm on the school board. That makes it my business. Katherine hadn't known that. She watched as Cyrus calculated his odds, his gaze moving from Nathan to his two companions and back again. "We're done here anyway," Cyrus finally said. He tipped his hat mockingly at Katherine. "Welcome to McGill, Miss Vance. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again." The three men left, their boot heels loud on the wooden floor. Nathan waited until they had ridden away before he turned to Katherine. "You all right?" "Yes, thank you for intervening, though I'm not sure it was necessary. Dalton's a bully and a thief. He runs an operation out of his ranch that everyone knows about but nobody can prove. Cattle rustling, protection schemes, probably worse. He's got the sheriff in his pocket." Nathan's jaw was tight. "You should stay away from him." "I have no intention of doing otherwise." "Good." Nathan seemed about to say more, then shook his head. "I was riding by and saw his horses, figured it might be trouble." "How did you know?" "Dalton is always trouble." He glanced around the schoolhouse, taking in the neat rows of desks, the alphabet cards on the wall, the books organized on shelves. "You've done good work here. It's not finished yet." "It looks ready to me." He met her eyes. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be a fine teacher." The simple statement warmed her more than it should have. "Thank you, Mr. Foster." "Nathan, we're not formal out here." "Then you should call me Katherine." He smiled, and the expression transformed his face, making him look younger and less careworn. "Katherine it is." After he left, Katherine found herself smiling too, though she couldn't quite explain why. School began on a Monday morning with 15 students ranging from 6-year-old Emma Porter to 14-year-old James Henderson, Mrs. Henderson's nephew who had recently come to live with her. They stared at Katherine's scar with unabashed curiosity until she addressed it directly. "I know you're all wondering about my face," she said calmly. "I was hurt a few years ago. It left a scar. If you have questions, you can ask me now, and then we'll move on to more interesting subjects like reading and arithmetic." A small boy named Peter raised his hand. "Did it hurt?" "Very much." "Are you going to die from it?" asked Emma, her eyes wide. "No, it's healed now. It just left a mark." "My pa has a scar on his arm from a rattlesnake," offered another boy. "He says scars are proof you survived something." "Your father is a smart man," Katherine said. "Now, let's talk about what we're going to learn this year." Tommy Dalton, a sullen 10-year-old who sat in the back, didn't participate much that first day, but he didn't cause trouble either. Katherine counted that as a victory. The days fell into a rhythm. Katherine taught her students with a patience and creativity that surprised even herself. She had them read aloud, work problems on individual slates, and help each other with difficult concepts. The older students tutored the younger ones, and she found ways to make even the driest subjects engaging. In the evenings, she often sat on the boarding house porch, grading papers or reading. Nathan took to joining her when he was in town, and they would talk about everything and nothing. He told her about ranching, about the difficulty of finding water in the desert, about the satisfaction of working with animals that had honest reactions. She told him about Philadelphia, carefully editing out the parts that still hurt too much to share. "You miss it?" Nathan asked one evening in early October. The weather had finally started to cool and Katherine had wrapped herself in a shawl. "I miss the libraries, the museums, the sense of history everywhere you look," she considered. "But I don't miss the people, or rather, I don't miss feeling like I had to be someone I wasn't." "Who did you have to be? Perfect, docile, decorative?" Katherine heard the bitterness in her own voice. "I was meant to marry well and manage a household and never have an opinion that might disturb anyone." "That sounds like a waste of a good mind." She looked at him in surprise. "You think I have a good mind?" "Katherine, You're teaching 15 children of different ages and abilities in one room, and from what I hear, every one of them is learning. That takes intelligence and skill." He stretched out his long legs. "Besides, I've been listening to you talk for weeks now. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met." Katherine felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the temperature. "That's very kind of you to say." "It's not kindness, it's observation." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge. Finally, Nathan said, "Would you like to see the ranch sometime? It's not much, but the valley's pretty this time of year." Katherine's heart quickened. "I would like that very much. Sunday afternoon. I could bring the wagon, make it comfortable for you. Sunday would be perfect." The smile he gave her made her forget, just for a moment, that she had ever been anyone but who she was right now. Sunday arrived with clear skies and temperatures mild enough that Katherine didn't need her shawl. Nathan arrived at the boarding house in a wagon with a spring seat, pulled by 2 matching gray horses. "These are Smoke and Ash," he said as he helped Katherine up to the seat. "Brothers. Got them as colts 4 years back." The ride out of town took them east into a landscape that seemed harsh until you learned to see its beauty. The desert rolled in gentle swells, dotted with sagebrush and the occasional Joshua tree. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already dusted with early snow. Hawks circled overhead, riding thermals invisible to human eyes. Nathan's ranch sat in a valley where a small creek provided year-round water. The house was modest, built of stone and wood, with a wide porch that faced the mountains. Corrals held a dozen horses, and cattle grazed in the distance, small moving dots against the beige landscape. "It's not fancy," Nathan said as he helped her down from the wagon, "but it's home." "It's beautiful," Katherine said honestly. There was something peaceful about the isolation, the sense of space and possibility. Nathan showed her around with quiet pride. The barn was well maintained, the tack room organized, the animals healthy and calm. He clearly worked hard to keep everything running, and Katherine found herself impressed by the evidence of his dedication. They ate lunch on the porch, simple food that Nathan had clearly prepared himself. Bread and cheese, apples, water from the creek that tasted cold and clean. "I'm not much of a cook," Nathan admitted. "When Mary was alive, she made the house feel like a home. I just exist here now." "How long were you married?" 4 years. "We met in Sacramento. She was a teacher too, actually. Came west with her family." His expression softened with memory. "She was small and fierce and laughed at all my bad jokes. When Sarah was born, I thought I had everything a man could want." "What was she like?" "Sarah, loud," Nathan laughed. "She had these lungs on her. Could hear her crying from the barn, but she was happy, you know. Always smiling, always reaching for things. Mary said she was going to be trouble when she got older." His voice caught. "I would have given anything to see that trouble." Katherine reached out without thinking and placed her hand over his. "I'm so sorry, Nathan." He turned his hand to grip hers, his calloused fingers warm and strong. "Thank you. It helps, talking about them. For a long time I couldn't. Felt like it would make it more real somehow, but keeping silent just made it worse." They sat like that for a long moment, hands linked, each understanding the other's pain in a way that needed no words. Finally, Nathan said softly, "Can I ask what happened to you, how you got the scar?" Katherine took a breath. She hadn't told anyone the full story, but sitting here with Nathan's hand in hers, she found she wanted to. "There was a man in Philadelphia, Jonathan Hayes. He worked with my father. He seemed charming, appropriate. My father encouraged the match." The words came slowly at first, then faster. "I thought I cared for him, but the more time we spent together, the more I saw another side. He was controlling, possessive. He would criticize everything I did, then apologize and say it was because he cared so much. I started to feel like I was disappearing, becoming smaller and smaller to fit into the shape he wanted. Nathan's hand tightened on hers, but he didn't interrupt. When he proposed, I said no. I finally understood that marrying him would mean losing myself completely. He didn't take it well. Catherine's free hand went to her scar. He had a knife. Said if I wouldn't be his, he would make sure no other man would want me. My father heard me scream and stopped him before he could do worse, but the damage was done. What happened to him? My father had connections. Jonathan was quietly sent away. No scandal, no trial, just gone. The bitterness still tasted sharp. My father was more concerned about protecting the family name than justice. He suggested I go somewhere quiet to recover, somewhere I wouldn't be an embarrassment. So you came here. I couldn't stay in Philadelphia. Everyone knew. The pity was worse than the stares, and I realized I didn't want to be that person anymore, the one who made herself small to please others. I wanted to be someone who mattered, who did something meaningful. She met Nathan's eyes. Teaching these children, helping them learn, it makes me feel like I'm building something real. You are building something real. Those kids adore you. They're good children. Even Tommy Dalton when he forgets to sulk. Nathan shook his head. Katherine Vance, you survived something terrible, came west alone, and turned yourself into one of the best teachers this town has ever seen. You're remarkable. I'm just trying to live my life. That's what makes you remarkable. He lifted their joined hands, studying them as if they were something precious. When I first saw you step off that stage, Coach, I thought you were the bravest person I'd ever seen. The way you held your head up despite the stares, the way you didn't hide. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite it. He met her eyes. I recognized it because I saw the same thing in the mirror every morning for 2 years. The terror of facing another day without the people I loved. But you get up anyway. You keep going. Katherine felt tears prick her eyes. You understand. I do. They sat in the afternoon sun, hands linked, two wounded people who had found unexpected recognition in each other. When Nathan finally drove her back to town, something had shifted between them, a foundation laid for something that might, with care and time, become more. Over the following weeks, Nathan found more reasons to come to town. He would stop by the schoolhouse to repair a loose board or check on the stove. He would join Katherine for dinner at the boarding house, and their conversations stretched longer each time. Mrs. Henderson watched with knowing eyes but said nothing. Katherine found herself thinking about Nathan at odd moments, remembering the way he listened with his full attention, the way his rare smiles transformed his face, the gentleness in his strong hands when he helped her down from the wagon. She told herself not to hope for too much. She had learned the cost of romantic dreams. But hope, she discovered, had a way of growing despite caution. In late October, the school held its first evening program, with students reciting poems and demonstrating what they had learned. The small schoolhouse filled with proud parents, and Katherine felt a satisfaction she had never experienced in Philadelphia. She had done this. She had taught these children, helped them grow. After the program, as parents collected their offspring, Nathan approached her. You did well tonight. The children were prepared. They worked hard. So did you. He hesitated, then said, Katherine, I was wondering if you might like to come to the ranch again. Maybe next Sunday. I could make us a proper dinner this time. I've been practicing. Katherine's heart lifted. I would like that very much. Good. That's good. He looked almost shy, and Katherine found it endearing. The next Sunday was even colder, with clouds gathering over the mountains that promised snow. Nathan had built a fire in the stone fireplace, and the house felt warm and welcoming. He had clearly spent time cleaning, and the table was set with care. Dinner was better than Katherine expected. Beef stew with vegetables, bread that was only slightly burned, and coffee that was actually drinkable. "You have been practicing," Katherine said, impressed. I asked Mrs. Henderson for advice, and Mrs. Porter, and basically every woman who would talk to me. Nathan looked embarrassed. "I wanted it to be nice. It's perfect." After dinner, they sat by the fire, and Nathan told her stories about the ranch, about learning to survive in the desert, about the satisfaction of honest work. Katherine talked about her students, about the small victories of teaching, about the pleasure of watching understanding dawn in a child's eyes. "I never thought I could be this happy," Katherine admitted. "After Jonathan, I thought I was broken somehow, that I would never trust anyone again." "You're not broken, you're healing. There's a difference." "Are you healing?" Nathan considered. "I think so. For a long time I felt guilty about being alive when Mary and Sarah weren't, like I didn't deserve to be happy. But lately, I've been thinking that maybe honoring them means living fully, not just existing." "What changed?" He met her eyes. "You did." The air between them shifted, charged with possibility. Nathan reached out slowly, giving Katherine time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he cupped her scarred cheek with gentle fingers. "This scar," he said softly, "it doesn't make you less beautiful. It only tells me you survived, that you're strong enough to face down whatever tried to destroy you and come out the other side." Katherine's breath caught. "Nathan, I know we haven't known each other long. I know we're both carrying grief. But Katherine, when I'm with you, I feel alive again. I feel like maybe I could have a future that's more than just going through the motions." "I feel the same way," Katherine whispered. Nathan leaned forward slowly, and Katherine met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, tentative, two people relearning how to trust. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I should probably tell you," Nathan said, "that I'm falling in love with you. Have been for weeks, probably since that first night on the porch when you laughed at something I said." Katherine's smile widened. "I should probably tell you that I'm falling in love with you too. Have been since you stood up to Cyrus Dalton for me. I'd do it again in a heartbeat." "I know you would. That's one of the things I love about you." They spent the rest of the evening talking and holding hands and stealing kisses like teenagers. When Nathan drove Katherine back to town, the first snow of the season was falling, dusting the desert with white that would be gone by morning. The next few months passed in a haze of happiness that Katherine had never expected to experience. She and Nathan courted with the full knowledge and approval of the town. Mrs. Henderson was delighted, declaring that she had seen it coming from the first day. The students giggled whenever Nathan stopped by the school, and Katherine found she didn't mind. They navigated their growing relationship with care, both aware of the wounds they carried. Nathan was patient when Katherine flinched at sudden movements, never pushing her beyond what she was comfortable with. Katherine was understanding when Nathan had bad days where grief hit him anew, sitting with him in silence or listening when he needed to talk about Mary and Sarah. In December, Cyrus Dalton's nephew Tommy got into a fight with another student. Katherine separated them and kept both boys after school. Tommy was sullen and defensive until Katherine sat beside him and asked quietly what was wrong. "Billy said I was stupid," Tommy finally admitted. "Said I can't read as good as the others. Reading is hard for you, isn't it?" Tommy nodded miserably. "That doesn't make you stupid. It just means you learn differently. I should have noticed sooner and given you extra help." Katherine pulled out a primer. "What if you came early every morning and we worked together before the other students arrived? Just you and me. I bet we could improve your reading significantly." Tommy looked skeptical. "You do that, of course. You're my student. I want you to succeed." The extra lessons began the next week. Tommy proved to have a quick mind once material was presented in a way that worked for him. Within a month, his reading had improved markedly. He started participating in class, raising his hand to answer questions, showing a pride in his work that hadn't been there before. Cyrus Dalton appeared at the schoolhouse one afternoon in January. Katherine tensed, remembering their first encounter, but his demeanor was different this time. "Miss Vance," he said, removing his hat. "I wanted to thank you. Tommy's reading to me now. Actual books. His ma died when he was small and I never learned proper myself. Didn't know how to help him." "But you did. Tommy's a bright boy. He just needed some individual attention." "Well, I appreciate it. If there's ever anything you need, you let me know." Cyrus shifted awkwardly. "I may have been unwelcoming when you first came to town. I apologize for that." After he left, Katherine sat down at her desk, marveling. This was why she taught. Not for moments like this exactly, but for the chance to make a real difference in a child's life. That evening, she told Nathan about it. They were in the boarding house parlor, chaperoned by Mrs. Henderson's presence in the next room, but granted enough privacy to sit close together on the settee. "You turned Cyrus Dalton into a grateful parent," Nathan said, shaking his head in wonder. "I didn't think that was possible. Every parent wants their child to succeed." "I just helped Tommy find his potential. You're amazing." Nathan kissed her temple. "I have something I want to talk to you about." Katherine's heart quickened. "All right." "I've been thinking about the future, about what I want my life to look like." He took her hand. "I wanted to include you. Not just for now, but permanently. Katherine Vance, would you consider marrying me?" Joy flooded through her, but with it came fear. "Nathan, I need to tell you something first. When Jonathan attacked me, when he cut my face, he said other things too. Terrible things. And sometimes I still hear his voice in my head telling me I'm worthless, that no one could ever really love me. I'm working on it, but I want you to know what you'd be taking on. I'd be taking on a brilliant, courageous, beautiful woman who makes me want to be better than I am. A woman who survived something terrible and turned that survival into strength." Nathan cupped her face, his thumb tracing along her scar. "This mark on your face, it's proof that you're a survivor. It's proof that you refuse to let someone destroy you. I love every part of you, Katherine. Including this." Tears spilled down Katherine's cheeks. "I love you so much. Is that a yes?" "Yes. Absolutely yes." Nathan kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Katherine felt the last of her walls crumble. She had come west broken and afraid. She had found purpose in teaching. And now, impossibly, she had found love with a man who saw all of her, scars and all, and loved her anyway. They were married in March of 1879, in the small white church with the whole town in attendance. Katherine wore a simple dress of cream-colored silk that Mrs. Henderson and Mrs. Porter had helped her sew. She left her veil back, her scar visible to everyone. She was done hiding. Nathan stood at the altar in a new suit, his face full of such love and pride that Katherine's heart felt too big for her chest. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, Cyrus Dalton actually stood up, and Katherine's stomach dropped. But he simply said, "I just want to say Miss Vance is the best teacher this town's ever had, and Foster's a lucky man." Then he sat back down to scattered laughter and applause. They spoke their vows clearly, promising to love and honor each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. When Nathan kissed her, sealing their marriage, Katherine tasted salt and realized she was crying again. Happy tears this time. The reception was held at the boarding house with Mrs. Henderson orchestrating everything like a general commanding troops. There was food and music and dancing. Katherine danced with Nathan, then with Mr. Whitmore, then with Jack the miner, who apologized every time he stepped on her feet. As the sun set, Nathan and Katherine slipped away to the ranch that would now be their home. Nathan had spent weeks preparing, cleaning every corner, building new furniture, making it ready for Katherine to truly move in. "Welcome home, Mrs. Foster," he said as he carried her over the threshold. "It feels like home," Katherine said, looking around at the house that Nathan had filled with flowers from the valley, at the fire already burning in the hearth, at the evidence of his care in every detail. That night, they came together with tenderness and patience, learning each other's bodies, discovering what brought pleasure and joy. Nathan was gentle with Katherine's lingering fears, and she was understanding of his need to sometimes pause and breathe through memories. By the time sleep claimed them, wrapped in each other's arms, they had forged a new kind of intimacy built on trust and love. Katherine continued teaching through the rest of the school year, making the daily journey from the ranch to town in the wagon. Nathan built her a small office in the house where she could prepare lessons and grade papers. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, working their separate jobs during the day and coming together in the evenings. Summer brought a break from teaching, and Katherine threw herself into learning ranch life. She had grown up in a city and knew nothing about cattle or horses or the endless work required to maintain a ranch, but Nathan was patient. He taught her to ride, starting with a gentle mare named Daisy. He showed her how to mend fences and recognize sick animals and read the weather in the clouds gathering over distant mountains. Katherine discovered she loved the physical work, the sense of accomplishment when she completed a task. She loved the quiet of the desert, the space to think and breathe. Most of all, she loved working alongside Nathan, building something together. In August, Katherine realized her monthly courses were late. She waited another week to be certain, then told Nathan one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I'm pregnant," she said simply. Nathan went very still. Katherine knew he was thinking of Mary, of Sarah, of the fever that had taken them both. She took his hand. "I'm scared too," she admitted, "but I want this. I want a family with you." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I want it too." "I'm terrified, but I want it. We'll be careful. We'll do everything right." "I can't lose you, Katherine. I can't go through that again." "You won't. I'm strong. This baby will be strong." She leaned back to meet his eyes. "We survived too much to not fight for this." The pregnancy progressed without complications. Katherine taught through the fall, finally stepping down in January when her condition made the journey to town difficult. Nathan hovered, protective and worried, until Katherine had to firmly tell him that she was pregnant, not made of glass. In March of 1880, exactly a year after their wedding, Katherine went into labor. Mrs. Henderson came to the ranch to help, along with Mrs. Porter, who had assisted at dozens of births. Nathan paced outside until Mrs. Henderson took pity on him and let him sit with Katherine, holding her hand through the contractions. The labor was long and hard, but Katherine was strong. As dawn broke over the mountains, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy with Nathan's eyes and a surprisingly loud cry. "He's got Sarah's lungs," Nathan said through tears as he held his son for the first time. "Listen to him." They named him Samuel Nathan Foster, and he became the center of their world. Nathan was a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor at night with the baby. Katherine nursed Samuel and sang to him, and marveled that she had helped create this perfect tiny human. When school started in September, Katherine decided not to return to teaching. She had loved it, but she loved being with Samuel more. The school board hired a new teacher, a young man from California, and Katherine passed on her lesson plans and advice with good grace. Instead, she focused on the ranch and her growing family. She learned to keep chickens and plant a garden that could survive the desert climate. She took over the ranch's bookkeeping, discovering she had a talent for managing finances. She wrote letters to a few friends from Philadelphia who had stayed loyal, telling them about her new life with pride. 2 years later, Katherine gave birth to a daughter. They named her Mary Sarah Foster, in honor of Nathan's first family. She had Katherine's dark hair and a quiet temperament that contrasted sharply with her brother's energy. Life settled into a pattern of work and love and the small joys of family. Samuel grew into a curious boy who followed his father everywhere, asking endless questions. Mary was thoughtful and gentle, with a way of watching the world that reminded Katherine of herself. One evening when Samuel was 5 and Mary was 3, Cyrus Dalton rode up to the ranch. Katherine tensed automatically, though Cyrus had been nothing but friendly since Tommy's improvement in school. Tommy himself had gone on to graduate and was now working as a clerk in the mining office, proud of his ability to read and write. "Evening, Cyrus," Nathan said, stepping out onto the porch. "What brings you out here? Got some news I thought you should hear. There's a railroad spur being planned, going to connect McGill to the main line. They'll need land for the route and the company's offering good money." "Our land?" Nathan asked. "They want to cut through the northeast corner of your property. I told them they'd have to negotiate fair with you, seeing as how your wife taught my nephew to read and you've been a good neighbor." Cyrus handed over some papers. "Here's their initial offer. It's generous, but I think you could get more if you push." After Cyrus left, Nathan and Katherine looked at the papers together. The money being offered was substantial, enough to expand the ranch or save for the children's futures. "What do you think?" Nathan asked. "I think we negotiate for more, then use half to buy more land west of here and put the rest away for Samuel and Mary. Education when they're ready." Nathan grinned. "I married a smart woman. You married a woman who knows the value of planning ahead." The negotiations took months, but eventually, Nathan secured a price that was nearly double the initial offer. They bought additional grazing land and established a fund for the children's education. The railroad came through in 1885, and McGill began to grow, transforming from a rough mining town into a more established community. Through it all, Katherine and Nathan built a life that honored both their pasts and their present. They spoke often of Mary and Sarah, keeping their memory alive for the children. Katherine shared stories of Philadelphia and the lessons she had learned from both joy and pain. They taught Samuel and Mary that scars, whether visible or not, were proof of survival and nothing to be ashamed of. When Samuel was 7, he came home from school one day upset because another boy had made fun of his mother's scar. Katherine found him in the barn, trying not to cry. "Mama," he said, "why do you have that mark on your face?" Katherine sat beside him on a hay bale. "When I was younger, before I met your father, someone hurt me. He tried to make me feel worthless, tried to control me. When I refused, he cut me." Samuel's eyes went wide. "That's mean." "It was very mean, but you know what? By hurting me, he showed me how strong I really was. I survived. I came west. I met your father and became your mother. If that bad thing hadn't happened, I might have stayed in Philadelphia, might never have found the life I was meant to have. So the scar is good. The scar is a reminder. It reminds me that I survived. That I'm stronger than the people who try to hurt me. And it tells a story about becoming the person I was meant to be." She touched Samuel's cheek. "When people ask about it or say unkind things, I remember that their words can't hurt me unless I let them. I know who I am." Samuel thought about this. "You're the best mama in the world." Katherine hugged him close. "And you're pretty wonderful yourself." The years passed with the steady rhythm of ranch life. Seasons turned, cattle were born and sold, the children grew. Nathan's hair began to gray at the temples, and Katherine found laugh lines forming around her eyes. They worked hard, loved deeply, and built something that would last. In 1890, when Samuel was 10 and Mary was 8, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. The surprise baby, a girl they named Grace Elizabeth, arrived that winter during a snowstorm that closed the roads for 3 days. Mrs. Henderson couldn't make it to the ranch, so Nathan delivered his daughter himself with Katherine's guidance. It was terrifying and beautiful, and when Grace let out her first cry, Nathan and Katherine looked at each other with the same thought. They had come so far from the wounded people they had been. Tommy Dalton married a girl from town and invited Katherine and Nathan to the wedding. At the reception, Tommy sought out Katherine. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said. "If you hadn't taken time to help me, I'd probably be working in the mines or running with my uncle's old crew. Instead, I have a good job, a wife, a future. You gave me that. You gave yourself that by being willing to work hard. I just pointed you in the right direction. Either way, I'm grateful." Tommy smiled. "My wife and I are expecting our first child. When they're old enough, I hope you'll consider teaching them. I know you retired, but you're the best. I'm honored you'd think of me, but my teaching days are behind me. I have my hands full with 3 of my own." Katherine gestured to where Samuel was chasing Mary around the dance floor while Nathan held baby Grace. "But I'll help however I can." As the years continued to unfold, Katherine did occasionally help at the school, reading to classes or sharing stories of Philadelphia that made the wider world feel accessible to children growing up in the Nevada desert. She found she loved this role, grandmother-like though she was still young, sharing wisdom without the daily responsibility. Samuel proved to have his father's steady nature and his mother's quick mind. He loved the ranch and announced at 12 that he wanted to be a rancher like his father. Nathan taught him everything, and Katherine watched her son grow into a capable young man with pride. Mary was quieter but no less determined. She loved books and learning, and Katherine taught her at home when the schoolwork became too easy. By 14, Mary was talking about becoming a doctor, an ambition that would have been laughable for a woman in Philadelphia, but seemed possible in the wide open West, where people cared more about ability than convention. Grace, the unexpected blessing, was pure joy. She had Nathan's smile and Katherine's determination, and she approached life with an enthusiasm that kept everyone on their toes. In 1895, on a spring evening much like the one when Nathan had first proposed, they sat on the porch watching Samuel work with a young horse in the corral. Mary was reading on the steps, and Grace was supposedly napping but could be heard singing softly to herself through the open window. "You ever regret it?" Nathan asked. "Leaving Philadelphia, coming west?" Katherine looked at her husband, at the home they had built, at the children who were their legacy. "Not for a single moment. That life was never really mine. This is. I'm glad you got on that stagecoach. So am I." Katherine took his hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "You gave me a life I never thought I could have. A real partnership, children, purpose. You gave me those things too. After Mary and Sarah died, I thought I was done, that I would just exist until I died too. But you made me want to live again, really live." They watched the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. This was the life Katherine had built from the ashes of her old one. This was what surviving had given her. Years later, when Katherine was in her 50s and her hair was streaked with silver, a young woman arrived in McGill with a scar across her cheek and fear in her eyes. She had come west to escape something. Anyone could see that. The townspeople stared, but Katherine approached her at the general store. "I'm Katherine Foster," she said warmly. "Welcome to McGill." The young woman's eyes went to Katherine's scar, then back to her face. "I'm Eleanor Davis. I've come to take a position as a seamstress." Then we'll be seeing a lot of each other. I'm terrible at mending, and my husband seems to tear every shirt he owns." Katherine smiled. "If you need anything, anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask. This can be a good place to start over if that's what you're looking for." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." Katherine squeezed her hand. "We all have scars, Eleanor. Some are just more visible than others. What matters is what we do with them." That evening, Katherine told Nathan about the encounter. They were older now, their bodies marked by time and work, but the love between them had only deepened. "I saw myself in her," Katherine said. "That fear, that hope that maybe things could be different. You'll help her, however I can." Nathan pulled her close. "That's my Katherine. Still saving the world one person at a time. I'm not saving anyone. Just showing them that surviving is possible, that life after trauma can be good. You showed me that." They stood together in the gathering darkness, two people who had found each other in the aftermath of loss and built something beautiful from the broken pieces. Samuel eventually took over the ranch, running it with the same dedication Nathan had shown. He married a woman named Alice who loved the land as much as he did, and they gave Katherine and Nathan grandchildren who filled the house with noise and laughter. Mary went east to medical school, one of the few women in her class. She returned to Nevada as doctor. Mary Foster and opened a practice in a town 50 miles from McGill. She never married, dedicating herself to her patients, and Katherine was proud of the life her daughter had chosen. Grace married a schoolteacher and moved to California, but she visited often with her growing family. Her letters were full of warmth and humor, and Katherine treasured each one. In 1910, Katherine and Nathan celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary surrounded by children and grandchildren. The house was full of love and chaos, and Katherine looked around the table at the family they had created and felt deeply grateful. That night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Katherine and Nathan sat on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. 31 years, Nathan said. "I was so nervous that first time I asked you to the ranch. Thought you might say no. I was nervous too. Thought maybe you were just being kind, that you couldn't really see me as anything but the scared woman with the scar. I saw you as the bravest person I'd ever met. Still do." Katherine leaned her head on his shoulder. "We've built a good life, the best life." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge over the Nevada desert. Two people who had been broken and had healed each other. Two people who had taken their scars and turned them into strength. As the years continued, Katherine and Nathan aged together, their steps slower but their love undiminished. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated milestones, and mourned losses. They worked the ranch as long as they were able, then gradually turned over responsibility to Samuel while remaining involved in decisions. Katherine wrote her story down finally, at the urging of her daughters and daughters-in-law, not for publication, but for the family. She wanted her grandchildren to know where they came from, to understand that strength could emerge from suffering, that scars were nothing to hide. When she reached the part about that first meeting with Nathan, about his words when he truly saw her scar for the first time, she paused and called him over. "Read this," she said. "Make sure I got it right." Nathan read the passage, then smiled. "You did. Though I still think you're being too modest about your own courage. I was terrified. You were brave. There's a difference." He kissed her temple, the same gesture he had made thousands of times over 3 decades. "Your scar told me you survived. Everything after that just confirmed it." In 1918, Nathan passed away in his sleep at the age of 71. He had lived a full life, seen his children and grandchildren prosper, and died peacefully in the bed he had shared with Katherine for nearly 40 years. Katherine grieved deeply, but without despair. She had learned long ago how to carry loss without being crushed by it. She lived another 8 years, active and engaged with her family until the end. She taught her great-grandchildren to read, helped Alice manage the ranch accounts, and corresponded regularly with Mary about medical advances and Grace about her children. On a spring morning in 1926, Katherine Foster passed away at the age of 67, surrounded by 3 generations of family. Her last words were to her eldest grandson, who asked if she had any regrets. "Only one," she said with a smile. "I wish I had come west sooner." At her funeral, the church in McGill was packed. Samuel spoke about a mother who had taught him that strength came in many forms. Mary talked about a woman who had shown her that trauma didn't define you unless you let it. Grace simply said that her mother had been the best example of survival and resilience she had ever known. But it was Tommy Dalton, now an old man himself, who perhaps said it best. "Mrs. Foster taught me to read when I was a stubborn kid who thought he was stupid. But more than that, she taught me that how you start doesn't determine how you finish. She came to McGill scared and scarred, and she left it beloved and surrounded by family. That's a life well lived." Katherine was buried next to Nathan on the ranch, beneath the mountains they had both loved. Her gravestone was simple, bearing her name and dates and one line that Samuel had chosen. She survived and she thrived. The ranch continued under Samuel's stewardship, passed eventually to his children and then to theirs. The house that Nathan had built and Katherine had made a home remained in the family, a testament to 2 people who had found love in the aftermath of loss. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the desert sun painted the sky in impossible colors, family members swore they could feel the presence of Katherine and Nathan on the old porch, sitting together as they had done for so many years, proof that some loves transcend even death. The story of the bride with the scar and the cowboy who loved her became family legend, passed down through generations. It was told to children struggling with their own challenges, offered as proof that pain could be transformed into strength, that scars were simply evidence of survival. Eleanor Davis, the young woman Katherine had befriended, went on to open a successful dress shop in McGill. She never forgot Katherine's kindness, and when she had children of her own, she taught them that compassion for those who were suffering was one of the highest virtues. The school in McGill eventually bore Katherine's name, a recognition of the year she had spent teaching and the impact she had made. Young teachers were told her story, about the woman who had come west with a scar and turned that mark of survival into a lesson about courage. Through it all, the heart of the story remained constant. 2 wounded people had found each other and built something beautiful from their broken pieces. They had loved deeply, raised a family, and created a legacy that extended far beyond their years. Katherine Vance Foster had stepped off a stagecoach in 1878, bearing a scar that society said made her unmarriageable. She had left the world nearly 50 years later as a beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, surrounded by people who loved her not despite her scar, but as a whole person of whom the scar was simply one small part. Nathan had seen her that first day and recognized a survivor. He had been right. But more than that, he had seen a woman worth loving, and in loving her, he had helped her see herself the same way. Their love story was not one of perfection or ease. It was a story of 2 people choosing each other despite their wounds, building trust brick by brick, creating a life that honored both their pasts and their present. It was a story of resilience and second chances, of finding hope in unexpected places. And in the end, it was simply a story of love, the kind that sustains and strengthens, the kind that turns survival into thriving, the kind that leaves the world better than it found it. The desert wind still blows across the Nevada landscape, carrying whispers of all the stories that have unfolded beneath its vast sky. Among those stories, the tale of Katherine and Nathan endures, a reminder that scars are not endings but rather marks of beginning again.